Welcome to Das Won't Hunt. I'm Jean-Pierre Ruth for Information Week. And in this episode, we'll be taking a look at, we're kind of calling it the search for correct and solid hires in the flood of what seem to be the generative AI produced CVs and resumes that might be flooding hiring managers and job applications in the market. Financial Times recently ran a story kind of looking at what seems to be a problem of this kind of flood, maybe lower quality CVs and what have you that might end up in the inboxes of hiring managers, and a bit of the issue that this is causing. So today's episode, I'm going to speak to some folks who are much more smarter than me about this issue, and then also what this means for the hiring process for the teams that are trying to actually look for bona fide real people at a time when many organizations are very actively trying to find the right people to help them with their growth in this period of shifting technology and needs. And then there's all of a sudden there's this inundation of things that might be gumming up the works. So joining me today, we have Gretchen Jacobi, Senior Vice President of Enterprise with General Assembly, Chris Camicas, Head of Engineering with DataDome, and Josh Bersin, CEO of the Josh Bersin Company. All of you, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you.
So looking at this idea of generative AI produced CVs and resumes that are potentially running into the market, Gretchen, can you talk about how hiring managers can really kind of sift through what was already a challenge to begin with, but now this extra layer of the technology being put into play, feeding in what might be potentially questionable quality CVs, and maybe even have questions about the veracity of the applicants. How does, what has this really done? What has generative AI in this sense really kind of done to the question of trying to find the right people, in this digital haystack?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I think is interesting about that question is, hiring managers want advice, or talent acquisition leaders want advice about sifting through. But I'd really challenge these individuals sitting in this role in the process to be asking a different question, which is this a bad thing? Is it a bad thing that candidates are using AI in their job search process? We want to hire people with AI skills. We're listing it in all of our job descriptions. And then we want people who can automate mundane tasks, things that aren't core to their job. And then at the same time, we're balking when they're using AI skills in their job search process. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. I'd also say, the job search process has always been things like resume writing, cover letter writing, interviewing, disconnected typically from what the role on the job is going to require. So you often just hiring somebody who is good at being a job seeker rather than good at being a project manager or a software engineer or whatever you are actually hiring them for. And so I would say that it shouldn't disqualify a candidate if they are using AI in the hiring process, as long as the output of the quality is good. And I think we all know, if anyone has applied ChatGPT to any real life situation, that the quality still needs to be checked by a human. You need to reprompt it, say, rewrite this again with my tone, take out the buzzwords, right? Use this different language. You can still prompt it into new areas where it doesn't sound like it is written by a bot. And I think that is important. So because you don't want someone on the job also using GenAI in a way where it sounds like it was written by a bot. So that's what I would be reviewing it for. I mean, this actually reminds me of, I'm sure Chris could speak to this more, but I think 6+ months ago, engineering leaders would have balked if a software engineering candidate pulled up Copilot in the midst of a coding interview and said, what's going on? And now you might view a candidate who does that favorably because they've embraced a tool that enhances their productivity. So in my view, it's really the quality of the output that matters. GenAI is still in a place that you had better review it before you put that end product into the world. It's a human enhancer, not a human replacer.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you very much for that, Gretchen. Chris, actually just jumping to you, speaking from a, IT leader's kind of perspective, how can you really be sure that the job candidates you actually have the real skills that they need? It could be they might be legitimate. They might very well made use of Gen AI to produce their resume and what have you. But then what if there is potentially some Gen AI embellishment that happens that they didn't then go back and try to stop because they just they want the job, they want the salary by any means necessary in some unfortunate cases. So what from your perspective do you kind of like do to try to make sure that the real skills that you're looking for are actually going to be present with the potential candidate?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Actually, I think we never were really sure. We are not sure they actually have the skills they write on the resume, and we never were, and we probably never will be. And that's why we have to meet them in person or remotely using Skype, for example, to evaluate their skills and to meet them and to discuss. And at DataDome, we are using in our hiring process technical tests. So we meet the candidate multiple times, and we have a technical test, system design, sort of, and it's a take-at-home test. So it's used to assess the technical and non-technical skills simultaneously. So we assess their technical knowledge. How does he or she justify his choices? What is the reasoning, and does he or she take into account the constraints we mentioned in the test? And quality of deliverables, explainability, writing skills, schemas, everything we need to have for when they will work with us. But most important part is the live review we do with them. So we check their presentation skills. How does he or she react when he or she is challenged? What are the interaction with the team? Does he or she ask questions to the team? And all the non-verbal communication part. And that's not part of the resume in the first place. And AI is not able to cheat on these different topics. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Josh, there's been a lot of talk about the idea of using AI, even prior to this particular topic, but the idea of using AI to kind of sift through and sort through job applicants, before we get to the Gen AI side of things. With this idea of this flood, as Financial Times have kind of described it, from the Gen AI side, does this mean that there should be more AI put into the mix to kind of like AI to help automate the sifting through applicants, which then might have a lot of Gen AI coming through on the other side? Should we just more AI stacking it up layer by layer?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, there is a little bit of a war of AI between the person. I actually think your resume means less and less to people because of the the technology we have in sourcing and recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the recruiting departments and recruiters who help people like Chris and Gretchen with the work that they do are sort of armed with industrial strength sourcing technology, and whatever you put on your resume doesn't really make that big of a difference. They're going to see what jobs you've had in the past, who you've worked for, probably the kinds of projects you worked in. They're probably going to look in your GitHub profile, and all that's going to be aggregated, and they're going to get some scores about this candidate independent of what they wrote in their little profile. And then they're going to work with their hiring managers like Chris, and they're going to go through a process of interviewing them, giving them a test, meeting them, evaluating them for culture fit. By the way, it isn't just how technical your skills are. It's, are you even going to get along with the people in this company or not?
Hmm.
And that's really what HR is doing. And I'm not too worried. Great. I'm not too worried about these resume generation tools. I think they're maybe cheap and dirty little things to make people feel better about looking for a job. But honestly, I look at a lot of resumes, and people want resumes that are sort of interesting and personal about that person. They don't want a generic best practice resume. Actually, that's just not interesting to talk to those people. It shows a lack of creativity, a lack of personality in the candidate. So I know it's fun for the Financial Times to write articles like that, but I think it's not really the way things really work.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And each of you, thank you for your specific responses. All right, now, so for all of you, looking at the time factor and the recruitment, the hiring managers, those are responsible for press their time to try and find the talent that they need. How hard does it seem right now in this current market to really get to the people that organizations are really looking for to kind of really help, with their next steps of what they need to flesh out? Hear different. On the one hand, there are, many times there might be organizations that are reducing headcount significantly, but then at the same time looking for, particular skill sets that they're trying to get on board. So right now, how hard is it, in this market to really kind of like find the right people for the jobs that organizations are trying to fill?
You want me to start?
I could take a first stab here.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to both Josh and Chris's points, the what's required to get a good hire has not changed. Even in the day of GenAI, you need to have, and this is proven through research, some of the things that you need to have are rubrics, assessments, whether that you call that a test or a real assessment, and panels. Panels meaning multiple individuals from different walks of the business weighing in. And I would say what those three things have in common is that they all take time. And what is always going to be a scarce resource, unless you believe in singularity and that robots are coming to take all of our jobs and we will soon just be all living on universal basic income. I believe that time is always going to be a scarce resource. And so creating all of that structure and being thoughtful about the competencies that align with those assessments and who's on the panel and what the rubrics are actually measuring is often does not get the priority that it needs in order to bring in the quality of hire that you need. I would say though, in today's day and age, talent scarcity is not as much of a topic as it was a few years ago. We're not in hiring binge time. And yet, even if there is more talent on the market, it's still so hard to weed through that talent with thousands of applications and then really never knowing whether you can trust what you're learning in the process. I mean, even when you have these rubrics and assessments and panels in place, we still see, I think in the IT industry, we see 13% turnover in the first year. And in software engineering, we still see 22% turnover in the first year. So you're still taking a big risk every time. I don't know that has moved in a Gen AI era, but I do think that the one big blocker to getting it right or getting it more right is putting the thought into these structures and the thought and time. And unfortunately, again, we're all pressed for time.
Gotcha. Josh, Chris, you have any?
Well, I would add there's another dimension too. There's always new technologies where there aren't a lot of people that understand them. Right now it's AI. It used to be data science. Next year it'll be something else. So, you're always competing with somebody else in your industry who wants that person to work for them and then assessing them against your fit and so forth. And that is something I think companies have done forever. And, there's no benefit of, as Gretchen said, rushing to hire the wrong person because it costs you a lot of money to hire the wrong person. But what's really new to me is internal development. We have done a whole series of studies. We did this in data science. We haven't done it in AI yet, where we found that it was 6 times less expensive to develop a data scientist from an internal candidate who probably knows a lot about data already than to go out and compete with Google to get this person, pay a referral fee, pay a bonus, give them stock options, and then they're going to quit anyway because they don't want to work for your bank. They want to work for an IT, they want to work for a tech company. So there's other options now. And I think in AI, we're going to be seeing companies build a lot of internal development academies too, as opposed to just go look for this purple squirrel, they call it, guru out there that may not be, may not exist.